The replicator buyers, SharePoint administrator and IT director, and the influencers have very similar objections during the early stage of the sales cycle. Here we'll take a look at 5 of the most common objections. Remember too that a lot of the pipeline for Replicator will be filled with individuals performing research. What does this mean? This means they might not have a full opinion, and you can face these objections through conversation and plant the seeds for replication success. A lot of times, increasing bandwidth objection comes hand in hand with organizations trying to implement SQL replication. The latency between the environments must be infinitely small. Sorry, yes, I did that. But they still think they can throw enough networking hardware at the problem to reach the goal. It is possible, but it is very expensive, and there are a lot of hurdles that you must go through. It's great if they can increase bandwidth, but what happens when there is a planned or unplanned outage? Also, if they're talking about dispersed farms and complaints about utilization, are they really in control of speeds, say from New York to London, say from London to Africa? Probably not. So this one, easy to overcome in conversation. Remember also that Replicator does bit differencing and sends the smallest package that it possibly can over the least networking that is available. All right, then another one, we'll add hardware accelerators to the network. Great investment and performance for other applications, but SharePoint is just not made for this because it's so complicated. Remember, the network must be up. The big shortcoming is that all remote sites really run off the same single copy of SharePoint. Additionally, document control between those remote locations must still pass through that central server. So it may be that it's fast enough, but if the publishers are all hitting one server, then there's still latency in the experience of the users. So this is great. Again, expensive, complicated compared to sending specific content over the line. Oh, this one's the pain, right? Well, we'll just go with a platform such as AvePoint. Okay, that's fine. AvePoint, you're installing separate hardware and software where Metalogix installs within SharePoint. Replicator is good enough. It has a 5-minute cycle where our Replicator is focused on conflict resolution and complex situations. And, it is the lowest rung of the scale, and that's what you're paying for. So this is probably the most complex early objection because it can do it, no problem. And, when this issue comes up, they might already have AvePoint, and it's hard to say, okay, pull out from the system you're currently using because our replication is better. It is, but it's good enough. Speaking of good enough, there are also the objection that they wanted to follow the Microsoft recommendation. So we mentioned this a little bit before, that Microsoft recommends a central server and recommends SQL replication. Well, that's fine, and you can do it, but not in the basis that we're talking about. You can't have SQL sitting in London and sitting in New York and be able to replicate select content. There are things that are called log shipping, but you're sending the whole database over. That takes time. So this really relies on users to make the connection and decide what content is important for them. And it doesn't support SharePoint mission critical content to be reliably available in all locations. So there's a lot more detail about this, but it's very common, and this is very complex where we get to point, click, and replicate. Then, of course, I'm just not going to do anything, right? We have a good centralized architecture. It's going to work, but if the business application for SharePoint is mission critical It's important to have the information available even in a time of crisis when the network may not be available, and that's where a centralized form falls short. So, also if they're metered connections like ship to shore over satellite, you're sending the full payload over that. And that's where our replication would be different. Also you can start talking about, is email really the most effective way to collaborate with these people? Do they get them? Do they get them in a timely fashion? Are you in control of that delivery mechanism? The answer is no, compared to replication, where you can be in much more control. So for Replicator, the objections can be handled by having a conversation, recognizing that most people are in the early stages of research, and having the conversation and investigating what is it that are the key pains and how can we help them build their business case to get content replication into their environment.